Okay, you've just finished reading about the Fair Housing Act from the U.S. Department of Justice. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination by direct providers of housing such as landlords, real estate companies, as well as other entities like municipalities, banks, or other lenders, homeowners insurance companies, etc., whose discriminatory practices make housing unavailable to persons because of 6 protected classes of people. They are race or color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability. Now, I'll spend most of the time talking about race or color and a little bit about religion, because those are the areas that we have to be concerned with in selling residential real estate. First one, discrimination in housing based upon race or color. The Fair Housing Act of 1968, the objective of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was to prohibit race discrimination in sales and rentals of housing. The majority of the Department of Justice's pattern or practice cases involve claims of race discrimination. Now, some people try to disguise their discrimination by giving either false information about the availability of housing, for instance, saying nothing's available, or steering home seekers to certain areas based on race. And the Department of Justice's Fair Housing Testing Program seeks to uncover this kind of hidden discrimination and hold those responsible accountable. You may have heard the ad on the TV that, or on the radio rather, that the caller calls up in 3 different voices, and the first caller calls up and says, the house, hello, this is Hector Elizondo, I'm calling about the house for rent. Maybe a little bit of German and Spanish there. And the respondent says, I'm sorry, the house is gone. And then the next phone call is a woman that says, hi, this is Lakeisha Jackson, I'm calling about the house for rent. And the lady says the house, it's already gone. And the last caller says, hello, this is Oliver Wentworth III, I'm calling about the house for rent. And she says, yes, when would you like to see it? I'm usually complimented this part in the live class about how good a white guy I do, because I've been practicing that for 50 plus years. That's the kind of giving bad information to a home seeker that is a violation of federal law. We've got some other examples here. There's a steering case in Atlanta, Georgia recently. The Coldwell Banker broker steered both in the context of home and schools. Before we talk about that, the Department of Justice uses testers. And if you've never been in retail and don't know what a tester is, a tester in a retail operation would come in and make sure you're selling the right product, or you're recommending and suggestion selling, etc., and you're doing your ticketing processes right. But in the home selling business, a tester will come into the office. You'll have a couple from one group, say whether it's black or white couple comes in, or single comes in and gives you some information, and you tell them, and they tell you that they have this much money and they're looking for this kind of house, they can afford this kind of payment, etc. And then they'll wait and see how you do, where you take them, what you show them. Then later on, the people from the other group will come in and give you the same general information, a similar request, and then they will take a look and analyze, well, did you treat them the same way? Did you take them the same places? And you've got a real problem. I think everybody should know this, but that's why we have the class. You've got a real problem if the white couple comes in and you take them this way, and then the black couple comes in wanting something that's similar, and you take them this way. However, in fact, it could be, let's say that you have taken both people to the same houses. The next thing is, how else could you maybe make a mistake? What else could you do that would be evidence of a potential fair housing discrimination? It comes down to, if you're showing the same houses, but what is the level of service? What is the level of politeness? What is the level of, what kind of questioning? What kind of qualifying do you do? You know, you've got a problem if you tell one group, come on in here, sit down in our conference room, let me plug in the VCR where your child can watch whatever, and I'll fan you while you look at our homes on the internet, and would you like a Coke? And then somebody from the other group comes in, you tell them, say, that's great, I'll be out there, wait out in your car, I'll be out there in 15 minutes. if you're treating people with disparate levels of courtesy, that's a problem. If maybe one group you're asking a lot of qualifying questions, you're really going over things thoroughly and hard, and then the other group you're not, that could be evidence of a problem that could be pointed out to you. So you've got to be careful, not just in what houses you show and where you go. Now back to the steering case in Atlanta, Georgia. There's a Coldwell Banker broker over there who steered both in the context of home and schools, and what he did, the white testers were told of schools they should avoid. And then the black tester would come in, and they were told nothing about the schools, and they were shown homes located in the same school districts that the white testers were told to avoid. Now, the question would be, do you think that is an isolated incident? I suspect not. And we've got to be careful. Some agents get a little concerned about talking about schools, but if you're doing things the right way and you're not steering in the context of schools, you don't have a problem there, most likely. Let me give you some history here about the extent of segregation. This is maybe not history, this may be just demographics. A year 2000 study of 69 U.S. cities showed that 64% of whites lived in all white neighborhoods, and 52% of blacks live in majority black neighborhoods. This will be interesting. What do you think the two most segregated sections of the country are? Now, your first answer in the class is usually going to be the southeast, south. The answer is no, that is not. It may surprise you, the most segregated sections of the country are in the Midwest and in the Northeast. What do you think the most segregated city in the country is? It's not Birmingham. It's not Atlanta. A lot of people might start thinking, well, maybe it's Boston. No, it's Detroit. Move on with the demographics here. The average white person in metropolitan America lives in a neighborhood that's 80% white and only 7% black. And even though some minorities are moving to the suburbs, the typical black individual lives in a neighborhood that's only 33% white and as much as 51% black. Let's next talk about the costs associated with discrimination. These bad practices have costs and affect people. Homeownership and wealth is the first one. There is a higher property appreciation rate in all white neighborhoods compared to minority neighborhoods, and that feeds the disparate rates of wealth accumulation. Put another way, if black neighborhood property appreciation is lower, and your practice or our practice is to keep blacks in black neighborhoods and whites in white neighborhoods, then we are feeding disparate rates of wealth accumulation. We're not helping everybody grow wealth equally. It's like a segregation tax. Next question, next point to understand, the homeownership gap. In 2004, white home ownership was 72.7%. And the same year, black home ownership was 49.1%. That's a lower number than for Pacific Islanders or American Indians. So maybe some of the things that I'd like to discuss or have you think about would be what are the examples of the kind of questions you might be asked. Think about the kind of questions you might be asked if you're showing houses. This is where it's really good to be in class. If you're asked the question, well, do any blacks live here, or do any whites live here? That's a common question. You cannot answer that question. You've got to stay away from that question. You can't avoid it. If they're going to ask it, they're going to ask it. But I want to teach you a three-part answer to that question. Memorize it. Just get it down. The answer is, I don't know. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you. It's a violation of federal law. Practice it. I don't know. If I did, I wouldn't tell you it's a violation of federal law. And then move on. Keep showing them houses. Sometimes the agent will say, well, but they wouldn't stop at that. Well, if the buyer persists, I'm going to tell you, maybe pull over. Put it in park. Make eye contact with them and look them in the eye and say, I've told you I don't know. And if I did, I couldn't tell you. It's a violation of federal law. Then they might say, well, hold a second, Jim. What do you mean you don't know? You told me you live in this neighborhood. Maybe that's where you have to, look them square. Plain, I don't. It's a violation of federal law. If they don't get it, maybe what the next thing you do is you take them over to the Circle K, tell them go inside and get a Coke and drive off, because those people are apparently not going to get the message, and they'll take you to prison with them. You're the one who's at risk if you violate fair housing laws. They're not at risk for asking those kind of questions. But the kind of questions that you might hear, it kind of depends on who you are and who you're working with. It's good to teach this class in a mixed group because the black agents will be asked the same kind of questions that white agents are. But who's asking and who's being asked can sometimes make you feel like there's a difference there. For instance, if somebody who looked like me came up and asked you, do any black people live in this neighborhood? You would probably assume certain things about me, especially if you're a white person. You assume, okay, here's a middle-aged white guy. He's asking that question. He's got an issue, and he expects the answer to be no. But if a black buyer, same demographics otherwise, like me, asks you, do any black people live in this neighborhood? You would assume that they have a different set of motives, probably. A black guy asking if there's black people living here is not the same as a white people asking if there's black people living here, is it? Well, in the eyes of the law, they are the same. Similarly, if you are, if you're a black agent and ask that question, first of all, if a white person asks a black person, they may take it differently because they think that, if he had a problem, he wouldn't be asking me that. Probably wouldn't even be working with me. Regardless, the question either way, regardless of the motive or the imputed motives of the person asking, you cannot answer the question. The first time I taught this class with a black agent, told that she'd been driving, showing houses, and her client, a black customer, asked her, "Hey, is that guy over there in the yard? Is he the yard man, or is he the homeowner?" Now, that's an uncomfortable question, though. At least the white people in the room, eyes were rolling back. That's an uncomfortable question. But the black agent has to be just as careful about that and not answer it, even though they might feel more comfortable because a black person asking.